Welcome to the Global Medical Device Podcast, where today's brightest minds in the medical device industry go to get their most useful and actionable insider knowledge direct from some of the world's leading medical device experts and companies.
Did you know that one of the highest careers in demand in the medical device industry right now is in regulatory? Who knew? I mean, there's probably a lot of reasons as to why that is, but I think it's really interesting to think about this as an amazing career opportunity for folks. And a lot of companies have huge demand for regulatory professionals. Joining me on this episode of the Global Medical Device Podcast is Mitch Robbins. Mitch is with the Anthony Michael Group. Their firm does a lot of recruiting for employers as well as for candidates who are seeking their next exciting opportunities. So he has a lot of insights and perspectives on this, and I hope you enjoy the episode of the Global Medical Device Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Global Medical Device Podcast. This is your host and founder at Greenlight Guru, Jon Speer, and excited to resume conversations with, I hope it's okay I call you a friend, Mitch, but I've grown quite fond of our conversations over the past, year and a half, however long we've been talking together. But I guess to those listening, joining me today is Mitch Robbins. Mitch is the founder and managing director at the Anthony Michael Group. So Mitch, welcome back.
Thanks, John. How dare you call me a friend? I didn't know you were going to do that on there.
Well, it seems right. I mean, you and I have talked, quite a few times on the Global Medical Device Podcast, but several more times just, keeping pulse on what's going on in the industry. And, today is one of those topics of conversation that I think last time you and I spoke in some depth about what was going on. I can't remember if we were already in the pandemic or not, but obviously, much of 2020 and even, early 2021, we're kind of still in the throes of that. And I'm just a little curious, I guess, on what you're seeing from the industry perspective. I mean, in your role at the Anthony Michael Group, have things been slowing down, speeding up? What is your take? What is your perspective on things in the industry right now?
Sure. Yeah. And first, again, thanks for having me on. Again, it's always awesome to be with you and be on the show. And likewise, as far as our friendship, as far as what I'm seeing in the market, I guess I'll take you back real quick to when this pandemic started to happen as rapidly as it did. In March, I, as the owner of our business, like everybody else, was pretty freaked out because I saw things start to shut down more and more progressively. And then we had some searches going on that, a couple had just finished up and a couple that were in the final stages went on hold just pretty much overnight, and thought, oh man, this is not good. And then I could tell you that by late April, early May, from that time period, late April, early May, through as you and I are having this conversation, we have just been nonstop with organizations that need our help to place regulatory and quality talent. And so I would say that the market is on fire, and demand is, I would almost go out on a limb and say, greater than it's ever been, quite honestly, especially in these functions.
Yeah, and I think that some parallels what I observed as well. I think there was that period of time of great uncertainty, not just in the medical device world, but just in the world in general. In that March, April timeframe, right, we were all trying to figure out, being sort of forced, so to speak, to be remote, and all these other things that were not commonplace for any of us. We were just trying to figure it all out, and I saw a similar sort of thing, and from a Greenlight world and perspective, that it seemed like, let's call it mid-April or so, people were like, all right, this is what we're faced with. Let's adapt and evolve. And I guess that's encouraging to hear that you've seen the same sort of thing. And I know from our perspective at Greenlight, I mean, it's been I hope this comes out the right way, a fantastic time for us to grow. We have personally, we haven't let anything that's facing us slow us down. We're like, this is a great time to invest in our business. It's a great time to invest in growing our business, adding additional key resources and so on and so forth. And it sounds like you're seeing similar sorts of things to some companies. I'm sure there are still others that are still trying to figure it out and that sort of thing. And I guess any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I guess a couple things come to mind. The analogy of the stock market. There's people that when the stock market is not doing well, they get scared and they end up selling. And then they kick themselves later when the stock market comes back because they lost the opportunity to realize those gains, but they got out because of the fear. Yeah. And then there's others who see it as a great opportunity to buy on the dip, so to speak, and realize those gains knowing that everything is cyclical. I would say the exact same thing has been going on in our marketplace within medical technology. Is organizations, exactly like you just explained with Greenlight Guru, who a lot of companies are seeing this as an opportunity to maybe be okay being uncomfortable, meaning, especially with hiring practices, so many organizations never in their wildest dreams thought they would hire on a remote basis, let alone build a remote workforce. And so I think people that are moving and adapting to what is reality are the ones that are winning. And it's okay to be uncomfortable, especially if you see a way forward to continue to innovate. And so I would say that the vast majority of businesses I've seen have, some were very early to adopt it. Others kind of, begrudgingly said, well, we don't necessarily have a choice. And then there's others that, quite honestly, I've seen continue to remain on the sidelines. I think the elective surgery business obviously was an issue last year, but that's coming back. So I guess that's the analogy I would use as far as the stock market, because that's exactly what I've been seeing.
Yeah, and I like the remote aspect of that, because same thing that we were faced with at Greenlight Guru. I mean, suddenly mid-March of 2020, regardless of where people were geographically located, we were all remote. Now, granted, we might be in the same area code, so to speak, but nonetheless, we're all remote. And, that was, I think, a pivotal moment for our company, is to realize, oh, wow, we've got to adapt and evolve and figure out how to work remote. So, it was a lot of pivots, a lot of iterative, collaborative sessions to just, make it work. And we have a great team of people. And so we were all committed to make it work. And, I think we've been thriving and very successful at that. And in so doing, we realized, oh, wow, there might be some opportunities to add some amazing talent to our team, people that maybe aren't ready to move their family or relocate to central Indiana, but, maybe they're perfectly happy in Austin, Texas, or San Diego, California, or wherever the case may be. So it's really, we really, I guess, reevaluated our hiring strategy and our workforce strategy. And, it's still evolving today. I mean, I know a lot of our team is anxious to get back into the office and that sort of thing, but, we're being cautious and, making sure that we're monitoring the situation appropriately. But it's great to hear that other companies have realized, wow, this is a kind of a great time. I mean, the old model, I mean, you and I are old enough to remember the old model was, you were expected to be in your seat at like 8 a.m. and you're there till 5, and you take an hour lunch and that sort of thing. So sort of regimented as far as your day-to-day schedule. But, it's a different world in 2021.
It's definitely a different world. And I think that flexibility is one of the key drivers, flexibility and autonomy, as far as why people are interested or not interested in opportunity. And, I think this whole pandemic thing has really caused leaders of organizations to have to look at things differently. Those who want to continue to move their businesses forward and grow, and seeing that, wow, a lot of these scenarios that we were concerned about that wouldn't work in a remote environment are actually turning out really well. So on that note, I'm going to be curious to see how many businesses actually continue this model and continue to grow their workforce this way versus how many truly do come back on a full-time basis into an office setting. Same.
I mean, I don't remember where I heard this, but something along the lines of, I don't know if this is somebody just being Nostradamus and prognosticating, or it was actually an article or something, but something along the lines of the workplace, the brick and mortar workplace as we know it today, will be a thing of the past in just 10 years. I know, and it's not inconceivable. I mean, a year ago, had somebody said that to me, I would have been like, that seems out of the realm of possibility. But fast forward a little over a year later, it's like, oh wow, yeah, I could totally see it.
I was just going to say, it just amazes me how much innovation and how many thought processes can be changed when you're forced to change. Tony Robbins, I think, is the one who said people make a change when the pain is great enough. I think that by being forced to be put in this situation, so many ideas and ways of doing things have spun out of it because we didn't have a choice,
Yeah. Yeah. The other saying that comes to mind is necessity is the mother of invention, right? And now all of a sudden we're all, wherever we are in the world, and it's like, well, we still need to get stuff done. So what do we do about it? And it's just rolling your sleeves up and trying to be creative. I mean, I know internally, we, as I'm sure a lot of companies, were very reliant on things like Zoom. I mean, I just remember when I started my career in the late 90s, to think that we would be doing video conferences on a routine daily, multiple times a day basis. That would have been like Star Trek. We would have never imagined something like that. But here it's what you do all the time, every day. So I think things like that have sort of, and it's not perfect. It's not a substitute. It's still that face-to-face live human interaction is the most preferred, at least for me, but I think it's a pretty good surrogate.
Absolutely.
I mean, obviously there are some sectors, especially in med device and a lot of other industries where, especially if you're manufacturing something, there's still going to be the need to be in a facility to do that sort of thing. I guess I'm a little curious as well. You talked about seeing some of the companies that you're working with, that have realized, okay, this is a new way of operating. We're going to change our hiring strategy and that sort of thing. Are there particular segments of the industry where you're seeing a lot of demand and growth right now?
I would say that regulatory is number one for sure. Are you asking the types of medical technology businesses or the types of functional areas?
The types of functional areas.
Yeah, I would say that regulatory is just the demand is off the charts, quite honestly. I always tell people who are in the process of trying to recruit regulatory talent, simply just go on any job board of your choosing and type in the term regulatory affairs, and you'll see all your neighbors vying for the same talent.
Yeah. And I'm curious, what do you think is triggering that? Any thoughts or predictions or guesses as to why the demand for regulatory is so high right now?
I'm still trying to pinpoint, but I guess I would, if I had to say right now, I guess I'd say a couple things. One, EU MDR is not going away. Whenever it does roll out, it's coming. So I think that's a big piece of it. I would say that there's unbelievable innovation and hyper growth going on in digital health. And so these companies are realizing the importance of regulatory staff and not just consultants. I would say that the population just in general is continuing to age, which is opening up more opportunities. And I would say that as a sector, medical technology, there's more and more startups, it seems, every single day that are luring talent from the bigger players, which creates more and more vacancies. And there's just not enough talent in regulatory affairs to go around, which is why I think some of these, budding programs that are, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I do want to say this. There's these regulatory affairs educational programs. And if you talk to regulatory executives like I have many, many times, it's split down the middle as far as how they feel about it. Does it prepare somebody to come into regulatory from college or, and how does the hiring manager feel about that? Or the executive of that functional area versus others who feel like, it's a great educational supplement, but it's not necessarily what you need to get into regulatory. And it's interesting because historically, regulatory affairs hasn't been like an area of where you're in college and you say to yourself, I'm going to be in regulatory affairs. It just doesn't happen that way. Most people got into it just like recruiting. Most people got into it by accident. And so I think that as an industry, the more intentional we are as far as helping to educate those who are coming up as far as the value and what regulatory affairs really is and how it could be a great career path, I think that's going to be truly important because, like I said, there just is not enough talent to grow around, which is driving this demand insane right now.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I want to get back into maybe some tips and pointers for employers as well as candidates here in a moment, but I want to take a brief break. I want to remind folks I'm talking to Mitch Robbins. Mitch is with the Anthony Michael Group. You can find out a lot more about their products and services by going to theanthonymichaelgroup.com. All one word, no hyphens, no spaces. Of course, we'll provide a link to that as well. And Mitch, when you and I were catching up prior to today's podcast recording the other day, you mentioned something about a new service that you're rolling out at the Anthony Michael Group. Do you mind maybe sharing with folks a little bit more about that program?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny, there's two things that I would mention. One is what's called the Career Hunters. And it's actually myself and a colleague of mine in the recruitment industry. And this idea of the Career Hunters, specifically out of a conversation one day as the pandemic was starting to unfold. And in essence, what it is it's an online step-by-step program for professionals who are looking to continue to move their career forward in one way, shape, or form, whether that's, learning more about how to position yourself for promotions or more so what it's based on is helping you understand how do you get yourself in front of the decision maker without getting caught up in the HR application dump, so to speak. And we teach you step by step the inside know-how of a third-party recruiter as if we were helping you with your search, but teach you exactly how to do it yourself. And so that's anything from scripting to marketing to understanding the buyer's journey. The whole thing is laid out in a 6-week online program. So that's called the Career Hunters. And the other thing I would mention is the new show, the MedTech Talent Lab, where we talk about all things talent related with a variety of industry guests, which, John, we're going to definitely have you a part of. All things talent related in medical technology. So that's the other thing I would mention as well.
Mitch, I am excited about both those programs. I mean, I'm going to dive in and consume or at least learn a lot more about them. They sound like wonderful assets to medical device professionals. So folks will be sure to provide a lot more information about those two exciting programs that Mitch just described in the notes that accompany the show. So let's get back into the scope of the conversation and, talking, specifically about the demand for regulatory. Sounds like the demand is coming from companies. And to your point, there's a limited talent pool as you and I are speaking today, a finite talent pool that is not meeting the entire industry demand. And, I guess where are you seeing the bigger opportunities? What type of employers? I mean, you mentioned a lot of startups are being successful at luring some regulatory talent to their initiative and pulling them away, in some cases, away from larger companies. Are you seeing the larger companies with a shortfall, or is it startups, or is it all of the above?
I think it's definitely all of the above. So a couple things I would say is recruiting has to change one way or the other. And the days of posting a position and hoping that the right talent shows up, does it work some of the time? Yes, it does some of the time. But I've been on your show before, and I can't stress this enough, which is why I'm going to bring it up again. It's all about the employer value proposition. What is differentiating? What is unique about the opportunity, the trajectory of the business, the scope of that position, what this person's going to be exposed to, and if they are successful in helping you achieve your priorities, what does their path forward look like? Because top talent, it cares about a couple things, especially today. One is, does your organization represent something that helps save lives or helps improve the quality of life in one way, shape, or form? And can you articulate how their job ties to that mission? Two is the opportunity basically to self-actualize. If they can come in and do exactly what you're asking them to do, how are they going to be rewarded? It's not necessarily monetarily. It could be, the types of projects they're going to work on or the scope of responsibility. And so what I see more often than not happening is organizations are just very old school and aren't necessarily thinking outside the box on how to attract this talent. They're putting up a job posting that says you must have 9 years of, class 3 medical device experience. You must have known how to, and then they'll put in all the hot button language and they'll have like a sentence about who the company is and a link to their website. I want you to ask yourselves this: when somebody is heads down, busy as can be with their current work, and they've got umpteen recruiters leaving voicemails saying they've got the greatest opportunity, and they see these postings about an opportunity that requires 9 years of experience, how is that compelling? How does that stop somebody dead in their tracks and make it a no-brainer for them to think about having an exploratory conversation with you? And so that's, I guess, my biggest message is you have to start writing as if you're marketing to a prospect and courting them. You can't just assume that because you have an opening, the floodgates are going to open. People are going to be dying to work for you. Some companies have that luxury, but I would say the vast majority don't.
Yeah, I have jotted down a few notes to follow up on that. Some things that first thing, the classic job description. To your point, I mean, there's 48 bullet points of all the thou shouts and the roles and the responsibilities and the expertise that are important, and the very little about the company. So I got to imagine that the quote classic traditional conventional job description. I understand it. I've written these job descriptions. I mean, you're trying to find a person that ticks as many of those boxes as possible. Everything that you can think of, including the kitchen sink sometimes. But in doing so, I got to imagine that that's a very that limits your talent pool down to like a handful of people. And what is your likelihood that you're going to find those handful of people, and what product are offering them that's going to lure them to you?
For sure. And so think about this. The vast majority of who is looking at job boards maybe are sitting right now. They're frustrated by something and they want to browse. So that's mostly the people who are looking, right, on a job board. Is somebody who's not necessarily content with what they're doing right now and is curious about what's out there. So let's say that you want to capture that sector of, prospective talent. When they go to the job board, and they see the exact same posting with a different company's name on it over and over and over, it's like a sea of noise. Nothing rises above that noise. Think about content creators on LinkedIn these days. There's so much noise on social media, let alone LinkedIn. How do you capture somebody's attention in just a few seconds so that they want to know more? And that's when I keep harping on the value proposition is instead of writing the posting about what's in it for you and what you need, think about writing it from the perspective of who's going to be joining your organization. And if you were on the streets or if you were working for a competitor, why would you consider talking to the company?
Yeah.
Or excuse me, if you were looking for an opportunity, what would be so compelling about your organization that you think it's a no-brainer for them to at least explore it with you? And I think very, very, very few people, unless they're studying this stuff, are recognizing this opportunity.
Yeah, and that kind of segues into another note I jotted down a moment ago. I think it's important to think about the workforce today, let's just it's right in front of us. It's the millennial workforce. I'm a Gen Xer. I go to the meetings every Tuesday at 5 p.m. But anyway, but you think about
that's great.
But the baby boomer and the Gen X generations, when they entered the workforce, completely different than when the millennial entered their workforce. And I think the other thing that I've learned a great deal, because Greenline, we have quite a few folks that are of that particular generation. One of the things I admire about the millennial workforce is they gravitate toward opportunities and companies that have a meaningful mission and to your point, value, not just from a career satisfaction standpoint, but that they want to know that the work they're doing means something to humanity. And they want to, align to that particular mission. I think that's really important.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I would say, so before this conversation, you and I had asked my team who talks to God knows how many regulatory professionals on a weekly basis. I said, as you talk to these folks and you're talking to them about their current career situation and their aspirations going forward, what is the number one driving factor why somebody would consider making a change? What do they tell you? And the number one thing was the type of technology and the mission of the organization. Is it life-saving technology, or how does it improve the quality of life? And so that ties straight back to what you just said, as far as feeling like you're being part of something greater. And this was way above money. Money was like number 3. So yeah. I think you're dead on.
Yeah, and I think it's back to what you were talking about a moment ago. It's about value, but it's about looking at this through the lens of the candidate, what's important to them. And I think, probably, and I'm speculating here, and it's probably not a fair speculation, but nonetheless, I'll make it anyway. A lot of people who are hiring probably are still of maybe an older generation, and and they probably haven't evolved their hiring practices. And I think that's sort of the big message that I hope folks take from this conversation. It's time to evolve and think about this a little bit differently, and realize that the people that you're hiring are different personas, that they tick to differently than maybe people you hired 5 or even 10 years ago. So I think that's really important. The other thing I think is important, especially about the regulatory side of things, and this goes also back to a point that you made earlier on in today's conversation. Used to be regulatory was sort of, not in all cases, but I would say in an overwhelming percentage, sort of an accidental career path. It wasn't necessarily something that the person sought out to do. It's just something that happened. They were with an employer. It was an opportunity for a promotion or a new job or whatever the case may be, and so they sort of stumble into regulatory. But what you've seen, I think, is really important is that people are seeking this out as an intentional career path right now, and I think that's a really key factor to weigh in whenever employers are looking to add to their regulatory talent pool, that people are doing this on purpose now. It's not an accidental thing.
Yeah, and my hope is that continues to keep, to be a bigger and bigger opportunity for people to realize, wow, this is something I can go directly into. And maybe I was thinking about going to law school, but I don't want to do that. I'm really interested in the medical technology space, and maybe I do want to be part of this, track they call regulatory affairs. And I think that the more tenured veterans in the industry can be part of outreach and explaining to folks who are going through school now or coming up the value of regulatory and what it can be as a career path. It's critical, quite honestly.
I think the other thing that I guess through my 22 plus year career, I've done more than just dabble on regulatory. But I think what has fascinated me in the past couple of years is all the, the nuances and the ambiguity that regulatory science presents. And I like to solve problems. I'm a fixer. When faced with a challenge, I like to figure out a solution. That's just how I'm wired. And I think a lot of, if you have that sort of skill set, I think that a career in regulatory affairs and regulatory science could be a really good career path. Just to figure out a strategy, like a go-to-market strategy. Maybe you've got something amazingly innovative and unique and that sort of thing, but how do you bring it to market? Where do you bring it to market? I mean, there's so many different options. And the other thing that's happening, you mentioned EU MDR. Yeah, that's going live here soon. And there will be another change that impacts regulatory. I would bet a lot of money on it from FDA or Health Canada or some other market in the world that it's going to require somebody to learn how to navigate that sort of thing. And so I think regulatory affairs professionals have this awesome opportunity to make a significant impact on the success of their company. So I can imagine there's lots of things that would feel good about being in that career.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an amazing opportunity. It's literally the functional area that brings together R&D, engineering, marketing, sales all together to get a product onto the market and keep it thriving and keep it safe in conjunction with quality. So I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, and the other thing I used to I'll date myself a little bit. I think within companies, a lot of times the regulatory affairs people were looked at as like, oh my gosh, I got to do this because regulatory says so, blah blah blah, all these sorts of things. But keep in mind that your regulatory people, they're key to your company's success because they understand how to navigate and work with FDA and the EU competent authority and notified bodies and anywhere else that you want to sell your product. I mean, they're the people that are going to make that happen. So I think that's really important. Mitch, as we kind of wrap things up today, any last minute tips and pointers, advice that come to mind that you want to leave the audience with?
I guess the only thing I would say is continue to think, especially when you're recruiting, continue to think, would this be something that would attract us as current employees of our organization? What we're putting out there, is that really compelling enough to get somebody's attention. And if it's not, I'd encourage you to think about how you can make it compelling. If you have any questions, exactly how to do that, always happy to be a resource and answer. On the candidate side, I would say, you're in a golden era, so to speak, as far as opportunities in regulatory. And just because you're happy with what you're doing now doesn't necessarily mean that you should close off your ears and eyes, because you just never know the types of opportunities out there that may continue to be an enhancement. So always keep an open mind and be open to conversations. Those are the things I guess I would leave your audience with.
Mitch, thank you so much. I appreciate your insights and observations and wisdom on what's happening in the medical device industry. So I appreciate that.
John, as always, it's really a pleasure to be here, and I'm appreciative of the opportunity to be a guest.
For sure. Folks, whether you're an employer looking to recruit and find amazing talent to join your medical device company, including folks in regulatory affairs, or you are a candidate who may be looking for your exciting next opportunity, you're going to want to reach out to a guy like Mitch Robbins at the Anthony Michael Group. Again, you can learn more about what they do and how they help and all the different programs and services that they're offering by visiting theanthonymichaelgroup.com. As always, if you need some assistance, if you're a medical device company and you need some assistance with your quality management system and workflows to bring your new exciting products to market and keep them there in a safe, effective, efficient manner, well, then I would encourage you to learn more about the medical device quality management system software platform from Greenlight Guru, the only such platform that exists designed specifically and exclusively for medical device companies. It's been designed by actual medical device professionals. We find that this is really important. Our customers find that this is really important. Somebody who knows how to speak the language and navigate the path that you're on. So go to www.greenlight.guru to learn more, and we'd be happy to have a conversation with you about your needs and the opportunities and see if there might be something that we can do to help you. Again, go to www.greenlight.guru to learn more. As always, thank you so much for being listeners of the Global Medical Device Podcast, the #1 podcast in the medical device industry. Continue to spread the word with your friends and colleagues, and look forward to chatting with you or sharing with you another conversation here real soon. As always, this is your host and founder at Greenlight Guru, Jon Speer, and you have been listening to the Global Medical Device Podcast.